So last time we were discussing polymorphism, virtual functions, and how virtual functions are implemented. If you guys have any questions regarding that, what are virtual functions? How do virtual functions work? And how they are implemented internally? How does the compiler decides at runtime which function to call from which object given a pointer of the base type? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Okay, thank you. So, any questions from the last class? Yes, Hamza, you want to ask something? Hello, nobody has any questions? Okay, so let us move forward then. Let me share my screen with you guys. Okay. So we had this class, it was called polymorphism or CP, so we'll copy polymorphism to them. So do you guys see the terminal that I've shared with you? Okay, good. So it's the same file that we had last time in last class. So you guys can see we have a class shape, and from a class shape we have inherited different subclasses, derived classes, rectangle, circle, and triangle. And these classes, rectangle, circle, and triangle, they are, they add more data, number variables, and extra functions to the functionality that was provided by the base class. So shape is basically the parent or the base class of all these classes. And if you guys see the rectangle, circle, and triangle, they are implementations, they're providing implementations. If you take the same concepts, shape, rectangle, triangle, in your daily life, you will also realize that shape is a vague concept, whereas rectangle, circle, and triangles, they are concrete concepts. If somebody asks you to draw a rectangle, you know what to draw. But if somebody asks you to draw a shape, a shape, everything is a shape, rectangle, triangle, circle, all of these are shapes. So if somebody asks you to draw a shape, what kind of shape are you going to draw? So, I hope you realize that shape is a high level concept, and rectangle, triangle, and circle are basically concrete examples or concrete implementations of the concept shape. Shape is something that we call an abstract concept. It's a high level concept, and it usually, such concepts are we call them abstract because they are not concrete. Okay, so there is a, opposition between abstract and concrete. And also, an abstract is something that is that you cannot implement. Okay? an abstract thing is something that you cannot implement. Just like the idea of shape. Shape is a very abstract level concept. Whereas a rectangle, triangle and circle, they are concrete concepts and they are implementations of the concept shape. I mean, rectangles can be also of different sizes, I mean, length, width, etc. Similarly, triangle, circles of different radiuses, but still they are much more concrete than a shape. At least you know what a rectangle or triangle looks like. Shape could be anything. Shape is much more abstract than these concrete examples. So the same thing is reflected in our code when we basically define this concept shape. So as you guys can see in the code that we do not provide any implementation for the shape. The class shape, it has no member variables. It is not storing any data because shape does not have any length, width, circle height, etc., radius height, etc. Similarly, the interface of the class shape, it is basically, the draw function. Here we are printing in the draw function just to show something. But if you had to implement this draw function for shape class, you won't know how to implement it, okay? Because shape has no implementation. You don't know what to draw. So again, this interface also, it's just a very high level, abstract interface that basically tells you that shape is an abstract concept and every shape should have these properties. Every shape should be able to draw itself. Every shape should be able to move. Every shape should be able to rotate, etc. So you can provide different high-level concepts that shape should be able to do this. But how to actually do it, how to actually implement it, that we will not do in the class shape. Why? Because simply in a real world, shape is so abstract that there is no specific implementation or shape associated with the class shape. Okay? So you don't know what kind of shape you are going to draw. And if you don't know what kind of shape is drawn, you don't know what does moving a shape means. What does rotating a shape mean? Right? So this class shape, it does not have any member variables, and its interface is also just a dummy interface. It's an abstract interface that we are providing just to specify that shape should have this interface. Every shape should have this interface. So the interface includes these public functions that are visible to the outside user. So this kind of class, that is just an abstract concept that is just specifying an interface which basically all of its derived classes are supposed to have. This kind of class, we implement it as an abstract class. Okay? So basically, this shape, there's no implementation, we don't know how to draw a shape, so there's no point in having an object of type shape. Here, let's say in the main, if I declare shape object, let's call it A. So this object A, it is practically useless for me. Since I don't know what kind of shape it is, so if I call draw, this draw function, as we just discussed, will not have an implementation because we don't know what kind of shape it is, what it should look like, how we should draw it. So this kind of object, and also does not have any member variables, etc. So this kind of objects are totally useless for us. So the idea of having such a object is that it provides a unified interface for its derived classes. So this class shape, its purpose is just to provide a unified interface from which all of its base classes, derived classes can inherit. And then these derived classes, they will provide concrete implementations of these interfaces, of all these functions. They will be implemented in the derived classes. In rectangle, we will implement the function draw because we know how to draw a rectangle. We'll know the height and width of a rectangle, its position, and then we'll be able to draw it. Similarly, we'll be able to implement draw function for circle as well as triangle. The purpose of the class shape is just to provide a unified interface. Okay? So there's no point having objects of the class shape. Okay? So A is practically useless for us. So to reflect this fact in our code, we implement the class shape as an abstract class. So what is an abstract class? An abstract class is a class which has one or more pure virtual functions. These functions on line 14 and 15, they are members of class shape and they are virtual. But these functions are not pure virtual functions. What does a pure virtual function looks like? So pure virtual function, instead of having a body, just like we have a body here of draw function, instead of having a body, it is just defined as equal to 0. It does not have a body. And similarly, move also, we can make it pure virtual. So now, these two functions on line 14 and 15, they have become pure virtual functions. Before they were virtual functions, but not pure virtual. And now they are pure virtual functions. So the effect of having a pure virtual function is that the class which has at least one pure virtual function, it becomes an abstract class. And what is the effect of a class being abstract? The effect is that you cannot declare an object of an abstract class. Now shape has become an abstract class. So here this code shape A, this will now give an error because we are declaring an object of an abstract class. It is forbidden in C++ that no object of an abstract class can be created. So let us try to compile this, and the compiler will basically tell us that so we cannot declare variable A to be of abstract type shape. Okay? The shape is now no more a concrete class, it's an abstract class because it has pure virtual functions. Okay? Any class that has at least one pure virtual function, it becomes an abstract class. And we cannot declare an object of an abstract class. So since we cannot declare objects of abstract classes, so abstract classes will never be used for something concrete. We will never make objects of them. So what is the purpose of having an abstract class? Okay, before we go this, is it clear? What is a pure virtual function? What is an abstract class? And what's the effect of having a pure virtual function? Virtual void draw is equal to delete is something different. It does not make it a pure virtual function. It just means that this function does not exist for this class. It does not make the function pure virtual. To declare a function pure virtual, it should always be declared equal to 0, and there will be no implementation. Okay. So before we go to the question, why do we need the shape class? Is it clear? What is a pure virtual function? How do we declare a pure virtual function? What is the effect of on the class? If a class has a pure virtual function, it becomes an abstract class. And what's the effect of having an abstract class? That we cannot declare objects of those abstract classes. Is the thing clear? Okay. The syntax of declaring pure virtual doesn't need, no, the body is does not exist for a pure virtual function. Okay, so these curly brackets, they are for the function body. So the body is just declared equal to 0, and that means that this function is a pure virtual function. Okay, they will never be a body or pure virtual function. Later on in a derived classes, we override this function and provide a body. Then we will be basically curly brackets and provide the body as we have done in triangle, rectangle, and circle, etc. But in the abstract class, a pure virtual function does not have curly brackets, it's just equal to 0. Okay, so if you guys are clear about this, then we come to the question that what's the purpose of having an abstract class? For example, here, why do we need the class shape? What's the purpose of having abstract classes? The answer that you have given is correct. So what's the purpose of having an abstract class? Can somebody try to answer? Multiple derived classes have a common base class, will have the same common behavior then. Very good. Okay. So as Hamza and before him Muhammad Ahmed said that it is useful to provide a common interface. And what's the advantage of having a common interface is that all the derived classes, they will implement the same functions. Okay? And since all of the derived classes are implementing the same functions, then basically we can use the base pointer, the pointer to the class shape, to access the objects of the derived classes and call their respective functions implementations using polymorphism. So it is to provide a common interface across the derived classes. So just like our shape class have like this function draw, move, and it can have other functions rotate, etc. So in itself, it is not implementing any of those functions, but it is providing a common interface to all the derived classes such that every class that derives from this base class, it will implement these functions. Okay, so it will override these functions. These functions are virtual. So derived classes, they will override these functions and provide their own implementation of these functions. For example, for draw function, every class rectangle, triangle, circle, it will provide its own implementation of how to draw that particular shape. And since this interface is common across all these functions, so just like we studied in the last class, we can use the pointer to the base class, the pointer to the shape class to access the objects of these derived classes and call the draw function on the derived classes. Since the base class contains the function draw, so the base class pointer can be used to call the function draw. Okay? And polymorphism or virtual functions will ensure that if the object is of the derived class, then polymorphism will ensure that the derived class functions draw implementation is called. Okay, is it clear? This, I mean, what Hamza called common behavior, in terms of C++, we call it common interface. This base common class provides a common interface so that all the derived classes, they can implement this interface, and then we can use the base class function, the base class pointer to call these interfaces from the derived class objects. Okay, okay. So, does anybody has any questions until now about this interface thing? Why do we need the abstract class? Yes, I mean the idea of the project is that you guys use all these OOP functionalities in your project, and specifically these these topics are aligned in such a way that by the time you reach this 11th, 12th week, you guys know these concepts, and if you start working on the project, you can easily incorporate these projects, ideas in your projects. Okay, so if this interface thing is clear, the common class being an interface, then we come to Mohammad Farid's question that the working of pure virtual function is transferred to derived classes or not. Okay. So yes, if a function has been declared pure virtual in the base class and you derived a class from it, and that class will inherit all the base class functionality. Okay. So this derived class will receive all these functions, draw, move, etc. as pure virtual. Okay. So this derived class, since now it contains these pure virtual functions inherited from the base class, it will also become pure virtual. Okay. It will also become abstract class. So we will not be able to declare an object of the derived class as well, unless the derived class overrides these pure virtual functions and provide its own implementation for this pure virtual function. Once it has provided the implementation for all the pure virtual functions of the base class, then this derived class is no more abstract. Okay, then we can declare objects of this derived class. So just let us see this in the code. So for example, here in a rectangle, let's say I comment draw. Okay. So circle and triangle, they are basically implementing all the pure virtual functions of the base class. Okay. So circle and triangle, they are no more abstract classes. They are now concrete classes. We can declare objects of circle and triangle. But rectangle, it is overriding the function move, but it is not overriding the function draw, which means the function draw is still pure virtual in the class rectangle. And if a class has even one pure virtual function, it becomes an abstract class, which means the class rectangle here is also an abstract class. And normally we should not be able to declare objects of the class rectangle. So let's go down. We remove the shape objects. So we declare, let us first declare it without rectangle, and here we'll just make it C1, C2 so that it doesn't give us an error. So let's compile it. Without rectangle, it should be able to compile. Just let me see. Virtual draw is private within this context. Why is virtual void circle draw private? Line 49. Okay, draw, it is saying draw is private. So in circle, draw is private. Why is it draw private? Here it is public in shape. Circle inherits from shape publicly. So public members of the shape should be this. Let's make it public to see what happens. Okay. Okay, I did not quite understand why it's calling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's calling 7 times. Why it's calling 7 times? Showing the 6. So there are 6 objects. C1, C2, C3, and we are calling 6 times the loop. 6 times draw is being called. And for circle, this draw function is being called. Why is it showing 7 times? Here circle draw is being called 5 times. But there are, oh no, yeah, sorry. There's this call to circle draw also. Okay. Sorry. Oops. Yeah, now it's correct. So we were doing that rectangle is still an abstract class, okay? So let's declare 2 objects of type rectangle. Okay, you see, so I cannot declare variable R1 of abstract type rectangle. Okay? So since rectangle contains one pure virtual function, because it did not override the function draw, so the function draw is still virtual in rectangle. Okay, so since pure virtual in rectangle. So since rectangle has a pure virtual function, it is an abstract class, and we cannot declare objects of an abstract class. Okay? Whereas circle and triangle, they also inherited the pure virtual functions, but they have overridden all the pure virtual functions, okay, in their derived classes. Therefore, the classes circle and triangle, they are no longer abstract because they have implemented all the pure virtual functions in their derived classes. Okay, so by default, pure virtual functions inherit as pure virtual in the derived classes. Unless you override them, they will make your derived classes also abstract classes. Okay, is it clear? That pure virtual functions are transferred to derived classes, and they also make derived classes abstract. Okay, and the fact that the pure virtual, the abstract classes, they are mainly used to specify interfaces. Okay, so interface is something, the behavior that we want to, that we want to be common among all our derived classes. So we specify it via an abstract class, and there's also an added benefit that when you declare a function pure virtual, you force your derived classes to implement that function. Otherwise, that derived class will also become an abstract class. Okay? So if you want to force an implementation by all the derived classes, you make that function pure virtual. Okay? Because the same thing could be achieved by declaring normal virtual functions. But if you have normal functions, virtual functions which are not pure virtual, then some derived classes might implement some of your functions and not implement others. But if you want to force those derived classes to implement a particular interface, a particular function, then you should make that particular function pure virtual. Okay? Because otherwise, then they would not be able to ignore it. If they ignore it, they don't re-implement it, override it, then their own derived class will also become an abstract class, and they will not be able to use that abstract class, I mean declare objects of that derived class, and they will not be able to use it. Okay, so this way you can force the derived classes to implement particular interfaces. Any questions so far? No? What about others? Okay, good. If that is clear, then I think this basically almost concludes our topic of inheritance and polymorphism. What else can we have in? So let me just, sorry, have another look at this error that we just had, that we had this function, it was not made public, and it gave us an error that we were calling a private function. So let me just have a look at it again. Okay, so this first we have to make it a concrete class, a rectangle. No. We override it. Okay, so calling the draw function through base class pointer is not giving us an error. However, if we had an if we called this function using a derived class object, then it gave us a problem. Okay. So now it is telling us that this function draw in the class circle is private with this context. Okay. And what if this function just so what if this functions were not abstract, if they were concrete function? Huh? Did you guys remember? Did we have this error in the last class, or did I change something in the file after our last class? Because I don't remember having this error in our last class. Do you guys have any memory of this error? Yeah, the function is private in public, I'm sorry, in circle, but you see here, it's public in shape, virtual by draw function, but this redefinition in the class circle, this redefinition, we have not declared it explicitly public, so this redefinition is private, apparently. So that's why we are able to call this function using the base class pointer. Because in base class, this function is public. But if we use the derived class object where this function is private, then we cannot access this function using the derived class object. So for the derived class interface, this function is private, but when access the same function in the same object using the base class pointer, then we are able to access it, because for the base class, draw function is public. But the thing is, I don't remember that we had this error in the last class. I have to see, maybe I changed something after the class which caused this problem. So here C1 is a derived class object. In derived class, the draw function is private, because by default everything in the class is private. So we are not able to access this function. However, for the same object, when we access a draw function using a base class pointer, the base class interface says that the draw function is public. So we are able to access this draw function using the base class pointer. Okay. So it seems it works like this. Okay, this is something that I learned new today. Any questions? No, I did not change anything. I just did not access the function using the derived class object. This line this line 50, it was giving an error. Okay, so for C1 object, which is of type circle, this draw function is private. So we cannot access it through this interface, the C1 object. But if we use the base class pointer, then we are able to access this function, because in the base class, the function draw has been declared public. So I just commented the line that was causing problem. You guys will see the C++ is quite complex language. So it has pros and cons. The con is that you will often be, always confused and learning these details all the time. Okay? And the pro of learning C++ is that once you go through such a complex language, learning any new language would be much easier. And there are other pros and cons that you will learn later. Okay, so no questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, then let's move forward. If you guys remember, a couple of classes ago, we had used multiple inheritance, and we had encountered something which we had called the diamond problem. Okay. So does anybody remember what it was, the diamond problem in multiple inheritance? No? So if you remember, we had, let's say we had a class A, and we inherited two derived classes from A, B and C. And then, so B and C will both receive an object of class A inside them. Every object of B and C will contain an object of class A inside them. So if we had derived a class D from B as well as C, so the class D will inherit everything that is in class B as well as in class C. So which means that B and C both contain an object of class A. So this class D, it will inherit two objects of class A, one from the class B and the other from the class C. So every object of class D will have two objects of class A. Okay, so this will cause a problem, because if using the class D we called a function of class A or accessed a member variable of class A, then the compiler will not know which member variable should it use. Since there are two objects of class A inside every object of class D, so there will be two copies of every member variable inside the class D. Okay, so the problem is the compiler will not know which member variable of class A or which object of class A should it access for that member variable. Do you guys remember this thing? We had encountered this in our class a couple of classes ago. So, okay, I hope you are not the only one. So let's see, let's see the problem in action again. So we have a class A. Let's declare int A. For the moment, let's make it public for ease of use. And we declare a class B which get inherited from class A publicly, and here we int B. What we do is we basically C from A, this side C, and then we declare a class D which inherits from B and C, and it adds a member variable int T. Okay. I'm declaring member variables public because I don't want to declare functions to access them. So now in my main, if I declare an object of class D, I can output d1 dot d, because d, the object d1, it's of type class D, so it has inherited everything from class B and class C. Okay, so it will contain all the members of class B and C as its own members, and since B and C have inherited from class A, so it will basically, B and C will have all the members of class A. Those will also be inherited in the class D twice, once through B and the second time through C. So for the moment, let's just access this D1 dot B. dot C. For the moment, we don't access the member variables of A, just to show that the member variables of B and C are present in D, object of class D. Okay, the D1 contains member variables of B and C as well as its own member variable D. So we don't worry about the values right now; they are initialized, but that's not our concern. Oops, line number 23. Okay, so garbage values, but still we have shown that we can access from the object of class D, we can access its own member variable D as well as inherited member variables from class B and C. So now let's try to access member variable of class A, which is also present inside this class object D1. So D1 dot A. Okay, so the compiler is telling us that in this line d1.a, the request for member A is ambiguous. And why is it ambiguous? Because since it has made like a rhombus kind of diamond where the object of class A was first inherited into class B as well as into class C, and since D inherited from B and C, so the objects of class A, they were inherited in the class D twice, once through A and the other time through, once through B and the other time through C. So D contains two objects of class A, therefore two member variables called A. So here it is telling you that there are two member variables that it has, and it is not able to decide which member variable A you are requesting. Okay, so this request is ambiguous. Okay, so this is a problem which can happen if you use multiple inheritance. So multiple inheritance can result in these rhombus-like structures, diamond-like structures, where the grandparent class may be inherited multiple times in the most derived classes. So this causes confusion for the compiler and it gives you an error like this. Is it clear to everybody what I am talking about, what we are talking about? The same thing will apply to functions. If A had functions and you called that function to the class D, then there will be two copies of those functions, two paths to access that function in the class D, one through B and the other through C. So the compiler will again tell you that it is not able to decide which function or which path you intend for it to call that function. So this is a problem if you use multiple inheritance which arises, and to solve this problem, basically the C++ syntax lets you tell the compiler that you should always, you should always avoid making multiple copies of the grandparent class. Okay. So what happens is when we inherit this class A, if you know that you are going to make a diamond, then when you inherit from this class A, you make this inheritance virtual. Okay. And C also, we make it virtual. Okay. So both these classes are virtually inherited, and this is basically telling the compiler that later on, if you inherit a class D from B and C, you should not duplicate A, but rather you should have one object of A inside the class D. So this is called virtual inheritance, which is basically a solution, especially for this diamond place problem. So let's try to compile it now. You see, it did not give me an error, and now I can run it, and it gives us the value of the variable a, garbage value, but it still proves the point that the multiple copies of the grandparent class which was arising due to this diamond style multiple inheritance, we can avoid it by using virtual inheritance. Is it clear? It's a very favorite interview question in Pakistan when you apply for a job. What's a diamond problem and how you solve it in OOP? Is it clear to everybody? Okay, thank you. Good. So, good. If that's clear, then we still have some time. So let's discuss another topic before we move on to next week's. Next week's topic will be next week. So, how do you guys organize your programs? Is it always in one single file, or do you organize your program in multiple files? Okay. What about other people? One file, good. Others? Single file. Okay. So I assume for others also, most of the time you guys use one single file, which is good and which is like preferred in the start because your programs are very small. But as your programs get bigger, right now we have like programs of what, I mean, how maximum like 100, 200 lines. So let's say if you have a program of like 10,000 lines or more, then it is very inconvenient to have such a program in one single file. Why? Because if you want to make a change in the program, you won't know where to go and make that change. I mean, scrolling up and down, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's always confusing, and I am always at the risk of doing a change at the wrong place. Okay, so 10,000 line is too long, and most of the codes is always loops, functions, etc. So things are similar. So it's first of all, it's difficult to find the right place, the right code where you want to make the change, and most of the time it happens that you miss the right place and you make the change at the wrong place. And it's always, I mean, very easy with the, I mean, pressing a backspace somewhere, etc., and deleting code that you did not need to delete in these files. So in small files, it's much easier to manage the code. But now that you guys are going to more complex things, your codes will become bigger. Especially in this project, you will see that you will have lots of classes, lots of functions, etc. So your code will be much bigger than your ordinary code that you have in your assignments or class examples. So in that case, the general practice in C++ and almost every other language is to divide your code into multiple files. So if you have to divide your code in multiple files, how would you choose, what will be the criteria of which code should be put together with other code? What do you think should be the criteria, a good criteria for putting code together? In this file, which code should go and which code should not go in this file, but it should go in that file? What would be a good criteria? Yeah, headers. Yeah, so yeah, so C++, yeah, it's good that you raised this thing. So in C++, when we divide the code, we divide the code into two different types of file. One is what we call header files, and the other that we call CPP files. So header files have an extension. Sorry, in C language they have an extension .h for header files and .c for C files. In C++, usually it's encouraged that you use .hpp for header files and .cpp for other files. So in C language, we have .h files and .c files. And in C++ language, we have .hpp files and .cpp files. So these are two portions, two types of files in which we'll divide our code. So we'll come later to what will go in .h file and what will go in .cpp file. But let's say you have a .h file or .cpp file. So some code should be put in this single file, and there will be some code that you will say not, let's say it's a CPP file, this code will not put in this CPP file, but rather it will put it in the other CPP file. So what will be the criteria of what kind of code should go in the same file, whether it's .h file, HPP or .cpp? Yeah, but in a single CPP file, let's say you have 3 CPP files and you want to divide your code in those 3 CPP files. So what should be the criteria that which code should go in the first CPP file, which code should go in the second CPP file, which code should go in the third CPP file? Which code should go together? Maybe I'm not expressing myself clearly. So basically it's quite simple. Code that is related to each other. Code that is closely interacting with each other. Code that is, code with related functionality, related classes, it should go in one file. And code that is totally different, it should go in another file. Okay, so this way, we divide our code into different components. Things that are same, dealing with the same stuff or related, closely related, we put it in a single file. Okay, and things that are totally different, then we'll create a separate file and put the unrelated stuff in that. Okay, so in this way, you can create as many files as you want. Okay, so the stuff, the good thing about having the code that is similar in one file is that usually when you are editing the code, changing code, so the similar code, you will be changing it in one go. Okay, so that code is available in front of your eyes in the same file. So it's easier to change that code in one go, because if that code was distributed over many files, then if you have to change one functionality and its related code is basically distributed all over the file, then you will have to keep changing files all the time, which is not quite good during development. So you want to concentrate on one thing, therefore all the code related to that particular thing, if it's available in one file, then you will be easily able to concentrate and address that code. Okay, so if we want to divide our code in multiple files, so how should we go ahead? If you remember, I think we discussed this .h and .cpp files a little in CS103, and the context I think was related to functions. I think so, I'm not sure, but you guys can tell me whether we discussed these, the thing of dividing our code into multiple files in CS103 or not. Yes, so how did we say which thing should go in .h or .hpp file and which thing should go in .c or cpp file? Let's talk about functions first. Good, very good. Function .h will have function declarations and .cpp will have what? CP will have definitions. Very good. Okay, so If you will have the implementation or the definition of the functions. Very good. So same kind of thing applies for classes also. So let me try to code this. Okay. Okay, so we are in a new directory. You guys also, for your every program, try to make new directories. Otherwise, your files will always get confused and mixed up. So let's say I want to make a function. Let's say I want to make a function. Let's say f1.h. f1. The functionality is not important because that you can do on your own. So because there are two functions called f1, and let's call f1 inside f2. f1 inside f2. So if you're noticing that I am putting the definition inside .h, okay. So if you're noticing this, that's very good, because I am doing something that is not natural. So let's have main.cpp. Now I want to call f1 here, and also I want to call f2 here. Okay. So I have all these files here. I have f1.h, which contains the definition of f1, f2.h, which contains the definition of f2, but also calls f1, and I have main.cpp, which contains the definition of main and is calling f1, f2. So what should I do to compile this program? I mean, this is one program. It's split over multiple files, but this is the code for one program only. So how should I compile it on the command line? Hash include f1.h in main. Okay, let's try it. Let's try it. So first let me compile it without your suggestion, what Talha said. Let's see what is the problem. Okay, f1 was not declared in the scope. Okay, so function, as you guys know, before function calling a function, we should have at least declared that function. Okay, even if it's not defined, but at least it should be declared. So f1.h contains the definition of f1. So we can include it before main, as Talha said. So we can have it include f1.h. So these, you guys know that if the .h file is in the same directory, we can use these double quotes. And so f1 is done, and now f2 is also the same thing, so we should include f2.h also. Okay. So now let us compile this again. Okay. Problems. Cout was not declared in this room. So basically this f1.h we are calling cout, and there is nothing, I mean the IO stream is not included in f1.h. So let's include that also. In f1 and f2, f1.h, because cout, as you guys know, is a function of standard library, so we should include so we do the same in F2. Let us see now. Still problem. Oh, cout was not declared using namespaces. It's not spaces, it's space. Okay, it has compiled, and if I run it, so F1 is called, and then F2 is called, which basically calls F1 and then prints F2. So this is a problem. So there is a slight problem. Let's say if I change the order of this. If I change the order like this, what will happen? I change order of includes. F2 is included first and F1 is included after. Okay. In F2.h, it says F1 was not declared in this scope. Okay. F1 was not declared in F2.h. Why? Because in F2.h we are calling F1, and as you guys know, before calling a function, it should at least be declared. So let's include F1.h here, so that F2 can call F1. Okay, now there is another problem. It is saying F1 has been redefined, redefinition of F1. In C++, there is a rule which is called one definition rule, that anything, a variable or a function or a class, etc., whatever, it can have only one definition. It can be defined only once. Here it is telling me that F1 has been in file included from main.cpp, function F1 has been defined twice, redefinition. So first it's defined here, and then it's defined here. So first it's defined like in main.cpp on line number 3, and then in main.cpp on line number 2. Okay. If I open main.cpp, line number 2 and 3 here. So 3 is including f1.h, so f1 has been defined here in f1.h, and line number 2 is including f2.h. So does in f2.h have we defined the function f1 in f2.h? Have we defined the function f1 in f2.h? So this is f2.h on the left. So does the function f1 is being defined somewhere in f2.h? Are you guys sure? Because f2.h is doing what? F2 dot h is including F1 dot h. F2 dot h including F1 dot h. Okay, so by including F1 dot h, we are re-including a definition of F1 in F2 also. Okay. So in main, on line 2 and 3, the function F1 is being defined twice. First, by the what's it called, F2 dot h, which is including F1 dot h. So it is bringing in the definition of F1. And on line number 3, we are again including F1 dot h, which is bringing the definition of F1 in main again. Okay. So F1 is being defined twice in main. One definition is coming from F2 dot h because it is including F1 dot h, and one definition because we are directly including F1 dot h. Is it clear? Why is it is giving us an error that a function and the function F1 is being defined twice? Okay, so would it be better if we include F1 before F2? Yeah, I mean, in this case, it would be better. It would solve the problem. But the thing is, there are only two files with two functions only. If you have like hundreds of include files, with hundreds of functions, then you don't know in which order you are going to include them. You will be including them multiple times in multiple CPU files, etc. So keeping track of this is very, very difficult. So what the C++ guys did is, and the C guys did is that they said, okay, what we need in main is the declaration only, not the definition. So what we can do is we can separate the declaration and the definition. So what they do is they separate the declaration and the definition. So declarations are put in .h file, which you can include anywhere you want. And the definitions are put in CPP files. So since the .h files contain only declarations, you can include them as many times as you want because you can declare things as many times as you want. But you can define things only once. Is it making sense? Okay. To others, is it making sense? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll separate these declaration and definitions. So I'll go, let's close this. So we'll basically make f2.cpp and f1.cpp to basically f1.cpp, and we'll basically from f1.h, oops, f1.h, we'll basically cut this and put it in f1.cpp. Okay. And this definition, this is the definition in .cpp file, and in
There the color. Double.
I'm sorry, my call was dropped and I didn't realize. So where were you guys? What did you miss? Hello, can you guys hear me? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's continue this from the next class. But please, whatever we have discussed, keep it in mind because we will not repeat everything. We will continue where we left off from the next class. Okay. So, yeah, then I'll download the attendance. Give me a minute. Okay. So if there's anything you want to ask, otherwise we can terminate and leave the class. Oh yes, okay, I've been not posting the lectures. Okay, I'll post the video on YouTube also. Any other comments? Okay, so there's nothing else. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend and see you guys in the next class and send the project document. This week I'll make a assignment submission on MS Teams. You can submit over there. So thank you very much and I will now leave the meeting.